Well, if you are able to watch our YouTube stream of the show right now, you're about to see some photos pulled from the archives of the spring of 1950. A large swath of Winnipeg was underwater. Look at those images, the water coming up to the bottom of the fences in the front of residential yards. Thousands of Winnipeggers were being told one thing: leave. Leave your home, head for higher ground. This is pre-floodway. This is actually what prompted the floodway. It's a flood that left many displaced and completely devastated our city. It is seen as one of the worst floods in Winnipeg's history. This weekend, to commemorate the 75th anniversary, the Seven Oaks Historical Society is taking a walk down memory lane. That's where these photos have come from that we're looking at on YouTube. And you're invited. It's called Then and Now, the exhibit, Scotia's Fight Against the 1950 Flood, meaning Scotia Street. And we've reached the group's president, Kenneth Ingram. Hi, Kenneth.
Hello, Marcy. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thanks for being with us. So for those that pretend we know nothing about this, someone listening, what happened in 1950? What did it look like in the city's northeast?
So 1950, it was supposed to be just your average sort of spring flood, maybe slightly higher. And at that point, in recent memory, the most recent flood was simply 2 years earlier. And at that point, people had sort of gotten the idea of what you do. You dike, you get your yard ready if you live close to the river. But this was not that. And the previous flood of this magnitude was close to 40 years earlier, in 1916. So those memories of what the Red River can do to these homes wasn't in recent memory. And so in late April is when people began diking and began putting up all of these dikes around the city. And there was 10 major dikes around the city. One was on Scotia Street. And by the end of April, they realized that this was not your average spring flooding, that we're going to have to do something serious. So they began calling in the feds. We need extra support. And by that point, it was almost too late, because on May the 6th was when the first dike in Northwest Winnipeg broke on Scotia Street, right near Kildonan Park. And not long after that, there was one on Seven Oaks Avenue, right near Scotia. And that one, too, broke. And that's what led to this absolute gush of water coming in. And these houses ended up being, in many cases, 5 or 10 feet underwater. And people needed to be evacuated.
How high did the water get in total? What was among the highest level in the flood overall?
So the highest level, it was measured at James Street at the time, and it still is today. And a normal river level during the spring and at peak levels would be, say, 6 to 8 feet in terms of a benchmark. During the 1950 flood, it peaked at 30.3 feet. Wow. So we're talking of 25 feet higher. And it just happened so quickly over the course of 2 or so weeks that people just were not expecting anything like this. And that's how we have these photos now to commemorate it.
Well, obviously, we could talk about every neighborhood in the city and the other neighborhoods, rather, that were affected by this. But you've done a lot of research. What's one of the things you came across that either surprised you or something that really stayed with you when you were looking into the 1950 flood in this way?
For sure. So one of the most interesting pieces and you see these photos now of just how the devastation that this caused. But it could have been much worse. And what really surprised me was that they were already looking into a worst case scenario. So the mayor of the city, Coulter, had a map drafted of what would happen, say, if the river rose another foot or two. And the impact of that, at least in Northwest Winnipeg, it could have been so much worse. So most of the water did not make it to Main Street. Maybe in one spot near Seven Oaks Avenue, near where the Bleak House Center is now, and the Dominion Mall, for those who remember, it would have gotten very close to Main there. But generally, it didn't really quite make it to Main in our part of the city, Northwest Winnipeg. But in a worst case scenario, even if it just rose another foot or two, we're talking to about 32 feet, it could have made it all of the way to the CPR, the train tracks, the Winnipeg Beach subdivision, which, for those who don't know where that is in West Kildonan, it's about 2/3 of the way to McPhillips.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about thousands and thousands of more people needing to be evacuated had it just risen another foot or two.
I already alluded to this a little bit, Kenneth. I mean, that this is really what prompted the floodway to be built. How else do you think that it shaped the city?
I think this put into perspective just how you need to get ahead of some of these devastations before they get this bad. So hindsight is so important, but at the same time, when you have a city built so close to the river, doing anything you can do to get ahead of it is so important. So yes, you have the floodway, you have Scotia being built up. So Scotia, eventually the street was built up in the places where it was most prone to flooding, which is mostly between Matheson and Seven Oaks Avenue and a little bit further south and north of those areas. And then in the wake of the 1997 flood, a lot of people will remember that one, more mitigation efforts were made in Northwest Winnipeg with the building of the dikes on the most east side of the property towards the riverbank for those living on the river side of Scotia as well. So
people should look at the photos and then take a drive around and think about what you're saying. Everywhere that is built up, they may not even realize sort of the impact. Well, the pictures, obviously, that we're sharing here are part of the exhibit, and you've been sharing a few of these photos, I understand, to get people, thinking about it. What kind of response have you had from folks to the fact that you're going to be talking about this and putting this display up this weekend?
It's overwhelmingly positive, and a lot of people have so many lovely memories of this neighborhood, whether they grew up before or during the flood or long after. The neighborhood, like a lot of times people don't realize photos of these, even if they're very old houses, generally it's very hard to find a photo of a house. And this collection from a photographer by the name of Harold K. White, who was a very famous photographer in Winnipeg, it allows people really to look back and see what their house would have looked like and their area would have looked like. And so we're so fortunate to have these photos and to be able to have them on our website.
Now, I was talking about walking around and having a look, and that's exactly what's going to be going on. So your event is part of Doors Open Winnipeg this weekend. Tell me a little bit about if people are coming on the weekend and they're going to sign up for this. How long is the tour? Like, what should they expect if they're going to take part?
Yeah, so the tour is going to be our typical Seven Oaks Historical Society style tour, which is not too long. We never go overly long. It's just going to be a stroll from Luxton and St. Cross is where it starts, right near Luxton School, just east of there. And we're going to make our way to Scotia and just walk a little ways north. And I have some large posters I printed out of these photos. And we're going to look at what the area looked like in 1975 or in 1950, 75 years ago. And I'm going to discuss some of the families that lived in the area, some of the evacuation efforts, and really talk about their stories. And in the process, I get to show off exactly what these houses would have looked like 75 years ago. And in some case, what happened to them if they're no longer there. And there's some very interesting stories I think people are going to find cool, like houses being even picked up and moved.
Oh, now I want to know, but we'll leave it there. We'll leave it for people to discover on the weekend, Kenneth. Thank you very much for being with us early and for sharing a little preview of what you're going to be looking at and talking about. Nice to have you on CBC.
My pleasure. Thank you again so much for having me on, Marcy.
Yeah, that was Kenneth Ingram live with us this morning on Zoom, president of the Seven Oaks Historical Society. Really cool photos. Saturday and Sunday, Doors Open Winnipeg to commemorate the flood's 75th anniversary. He will be the host of Then and Now, Scotia's fight against the 1950 flood. And it looks like the weather's going to cooperate, like sunshine and highs around 19 and 22 this weekend. So it should be a beautiful weekend to take part in Doors Open.